Hey Luke, how's it going?
It's going very well, Yvonne. How are you?
Doing great. We are preparing here for a storm.
Oh,
We don't have snow.
you don't.
Canada is Manitoba right now, where I live. We
Mm,
usually have so much snow, and we
mm.
don't. We can still see the grass that's kind of dead right now. So brown grass, but no snow. And my kids were like, "Are we going to get snow this year?" So that's how my week is going.
Well,
We're trying.
when we get snow, it's about 2 centimeters, and the whole world stops. There's schools closed down. People get stuck on. it's horrendous. And then I just see places like Canada or other places that have like inches and inches, and think, what are we doing? But we haven't. We had a little bit of snow the other day, and when I say a little bit of snow, it fell just a little bit, and then it did nothing. It didn't stick. That's the word here. Did it stick? Did it stick?
It didn't
Um,
stick.
didn't stick. So maybe it wasn't real snow.
Yeah, we have no, we don't have anything. We are without. We are
Without,
without so
without
far. Without. It'll be a brown Christmas. We've never had a brown Christmas.
brown Christmas. Wow. Anyway, well, we're just having a random chat there. Hello, viewers. Hello, listeners.
Yeah.
This is episode number 5 of the On the Road to Damascus podcast with myself, Luke Askew, and Yvonne Rempel. And we are talking, or our question today is, do you know what God sounds like? Ooh.
Ooh. I don't know why that sounded like a ghost sound. God doesn't sound like a ghost.
Okay, so
I
let's
don't know.
start. Let's start here then. What does God sound like to you?
What does God sound like to me? That, you know what? When we decided we were going to do this question, I was thinking about it, and God sounds like many different things. And so then I was trying to decide and trying to pick. And the biggest thing that stood out to me is that he sounded exactly what I needed him to sound like in the season, the moment, and timing of my life.
Hmm.
That's where he was, and that's where I heard him. So, what I mean by that is that there was a moment where I needed to hear my father's voice, and I heard the voice of God. There was moments where I needed to know that he was with me, and I would feel him in the nature I was walking in. Right, there was moments where I would feel very upset, and I could hear him in the giggle of my children. There was moments that I knew he was with me based on the season and timing I was in my life, and he was there and met me right where I was. That's, to me, is what God sounds like.
That's very beautiful. That should be on a Pinterest board. Like one of
What
them.
God sounds like on a Pinterest board.
He's the wind in the sky. He's the
He's
birds
the
in the trees. Like, that's such a lovely description. I totally understand that. For me, I say this, and then I got told that someone else said this as well, but I don't know who else said it. But he's the small voice that sounds exactly like me, encouraging me.
Yeah.
Um, he's the he's the part of me that knows there's more for my life. He's trying to encourage me, to guide me,
Yeah.
but sometimes I can not listen to him, or choose not to listen to him, and partner with another voice that sounds exactly like me, but is fearful, saying, I'm not going to achieve these things, or I'm not going to be able to do these things. So, God for me sounds so much like me that sometimes I find it hard to work out what is God and what is me. And
Yeah.
and I've stepped out boldly. I'll tell the first story. Is that all right?
Yeah. Go ahead.
I've stepped out boldly when I've thought I heard the voice of God. I've got a few stories that I'll talk about, but this is one story that really moves me. And I was on my dinner break, and I pulled into the local coffee shop, Costa, in the United Kingdom for the Canadian viewers. And and I was just getting my coffee and my dinner on my break. And as I was walking to the coffee shop, it's interesting that you said feel, right? I
Yeah.
felt like I needed to bless someone. I felt like I needed to bless someone. When I say bless someone, pay for the coffee. I do it sometimes. It's kind of like that nice, kind gesture that I do, right? But this time,
Yeah.
I felt an urge to do it in one sense. And I walked into the coffee
Yeah.
shop and I got my dinner, and I stood in the queue. And then I asked God, who is it that you want to bless? And then I heard myself say, it's the
Yeah.
person in front of you. And it was this little old woman, lovely old woman. And I didn't know why, but it felt like it was meant to be her. And as she pulled up, as she got to the till before me, she asked for like a little scone or whatever it was, like a little cake and a coffee for her and her husband. Her husband went and sat down at the table, and then I just put my order on top of her order, and I said, I'll pay for the lot." And she just looked at me and went, why are you doing that?" And I just looked at her and I just go, "I just want to bless you today. Like, I just want to bless you today."
Yeah.
And she just starts welling up, and she goes, "That is so kind of you. You don't know how much that means." She goes, "We just found out that our grandson had killed himself
Oh,
over the last few, I think it was the last week or whatever. And we've been going through so much pain and hurt."
yeah.
And I was just like, because I knew, like, for me to walk into that shop and feel like God wanted me to have an interaction with her, and then to hear something like that, and I walked over with the coffees, and she was like older, right? And I put the coffees down with her husband and her, and I just said to her, and I just said, "I'm really sorry for your loss." I said, "But the reason why I bless you today is because I'm a Christian, and I believe God told me to bless you today." And then I kind of just really felt that God wanted them to understand that He was there with them in this pain. And I
Yeah.
didn't know if they were Christians. I didn't know if they knew anything about God. I wasn't there to share the gospel or anything. I was just there to
Right.
say, God cares for you and God knows what's
Yeah.
happening. He's here for you. This is Him. And she just gave me the biggest hug, and I just went and did my work. And
Yeah.
then she walked past me at the end and she just said, "Can I give you a hug?" I just gave her a massive hug, and she went, "This has moved us so much." And then she said something quite funny. She said, "I think we need to adopt a dog." And I was like, "What?" And she goes, "We've been umming and ahhing about getting a dog and if it was the right thing to adopt it." She said, "But you've just proved to us that kindness can really make a difference. And I think we're going to go ahead and do that." And I was like, "You go and do that. Have a wonderful day." And I just think about how I had a feeling and I had an idea. It wasn't like this big voice in the sky going, "Hey, there's going to be a woman in there and she's going to be this age and this is the reason why." It was just me trusting my gut in one sense. And it just turns out I believe it was for a reason that God wanted to really show up in that moment in their lives.
Yeah. It's people expect that God talks how we think in the movies, right? It's always a big booming voice from heaven going, "This is what you need to do." And, we sit there and we make choices where we go, "God, can you hear me?" I mean, one of our big choices in my family that I want to, share is that my family is looking to move to England to be closer to Luke's family because we want to continue doing our business together. And we have felt our families heard God tell us what we need to be doing in these moments. And then in this moment, there's a standstill
Mm.
where you feel like you don't hear anything, where you sit there and you're like, oh, did I make the right choice? I don't know. Like I'm pretty sure I heard, and you're confident that you did, but you're not hearing anything. And you sit there and you go, can you explain to me what we are doing? And you're expecting a big booming voice, but I never find him in those big booming moments. It's always the very quietest, unexpected time, because I was sharing before we started our podcast today to Luke that while I was putting a little bit of makeup on today, that was the moment that I heard him speak to me. And it's not always, sitting and reading your Bible for hours on end. And if you love to do that, yay, you. But it's not always those moments. You see, I believe that he talks to us all the time. So it's like he's a radio station. And that radio station is constantly going across the earth, and there's radio waves. And every now and then, if we turn our antenna that we carry individually, we can catch the sound waves of God. And that's the moment where the still small voice comes in, and we catch it in those moments when we least expect it. So in your story that you shared, Luke, it had something that really stood out to me, and I was thinking about it as you were speaking. You said you wanted to bless them. And often the voice of God speaks to us so that we have an opportunity to be blessed by him or to bless others. And when we bless others, it isn't so that we get something in return. But here's the funny thing. Every time you bless somebody, you actually get a blessing in return, because the emotional response is overwhelming. Now, not everybody reacts to that when you go and you talk to them, but generally there is an overwhelming sense of, yeah, peace. Yeah, I feel good about this. This sits right with me. If you are hearing God and you feel fear, that's not God. There's no fear in the kingdom of heaven. So that's not God. Or if you're feeling anxious. So I want to share, can I share one of my stories that definitely. I've done?
Please do.
I was buying groceries for my family. And usually when I do my grocery shopping trip, it's by myself. So I get a little bit of time to myself, and I really enjoyed it. This is pre-COVID, when I can be out and just shop for hours on end when you only need two things. So I was shopping at a grocery store, and I had my list of stuff, and I was getting in line to pay. And I saw this really young woman behind me, and she had very few things, and she put them on the I don't know what it's called, wherever you put your groceries so they can bring them through the counter.
Yeah.
Well, ours is like a conveyor belt so that they can pull it in. So they put it on the counter. So she paid for mine, and I heard God say, pay for her groceries. And you know what I said? I only have enough money to pay for my groceries, because and we're sharing our experiences, and I want people to feel like we don't always naturally feel we want to obey all the time to do the things, right? Because when I'm feeding a family of 5, and when you have 2 hungry boys in there, it's generally a large grocery bill. And I thought to myself, I was like, God, I don't have that much money. And he said to me, he goes, no, Yvonne, you need to help them. And I said, okay. And I looked back and I saw it was 2 people. It was this younger woman and what looked to be her dad. And I said, okay, I'm going to do it. So my first thought was, I'm shaking. I'm nervous. I have this adrenaline kick rushing through my body, because I'm about to tell them that I'm going to do something that is abnormal. Okay, let's just point this out. It's abnormal to pay for other people's groceries. And there is a fear, not in a fear of what I heard, but a fear that I'm going to be rejected because I'm offering to do something. There's a difference in the fear, and I want to make that very clear. I didn't feel fearful to listen and hear God. There's no fear there, but I was fearing the rejection that could have came. And so I looked to them and I said, I'd like to pay for your groceries. And I'm waiting. I'm waiting because I'm like, oh man, they could just be like, no, thank you, right? And then that's, like, sometimes you just don't know what you're going to expect. And the dad looked at me and he goes, "You don't have to." And I looked at him and I said, "But I do have to." And I was like, why did I even say that? Because I don't have to. That was my exit. That was my exit strategy right there. I could have been like, thank you. I only have enough money for mine. I walked away. And all of a sudden I went, but I do have to. And I looked at him again, and all of a sudden you could see his eyes started welling up. And he goes, "This is my daughter. She just moved out on her own. She started telling me about this job that she worked. And, it's hard to move out on your own. And, she drove in to do some laundry and she didn't have enough groceries, but mom and dad didn't have enough groceries either because they still had kids at home too." And I helped her and I looked at her and I said, "I know what it's like when you move out on your own." And one day, now that I'm tearing up, because one day I think about it, one day my son is going to be in that same position. And that time, that was almost 10 years ago. And he's in this position now where, there's moments where it's a young person thing, he's going to struggle. But it wasn't a blessing. I wasn't expecting something in return. What I was putting myself out there, listening and obeying. In return, I felt happy that I got to help somebody, but it wasn't just helping them because I had more money. It was I got to know somebody and their situation. I had an opportunity to be part of their story in their life.
It's crazy that how in them small moments, like you just said, how we are so fearful of the response. But the truth is that God knows things that we don't know. Like,
Yeah.
he knows her situation. He knows what that dad is thinking. He knows that dad was going in thinking, right, I've got to provide for my daughter, but I can't. Like, God knows this, and he picks you to bless them because he knows that you can bless him, and he knows that he can trust you to do it on his behalf. And I
Yeah.
think God picks people and speaks to people who he knows has the capability within them to go and do that, or the heart to go and do it. And I think you're right about the fear thing. It's like hearing things and being fearful of the things that you hear, that ain't God. But fear
Yeah.
of the rejection of the how are they going to react, that's a real thing. And I'll share another story in terms of what I mean that God knows things that we don't. Is that something that we both believe is that very point that God knows everything. And I
Yeah.
realized that if God knows everything, and throughout scripture, we can see that Jesus says things about people and about their lives that they've never shared with him personally. And that showed how Jesus was God, that he was revealing these truths, this knowledge that he had about people's lives. And God still does that now. And I remember we call that like a word of knowledge. And when we say a word,
Yeah.
I mean, when God speaks, he's going to speak something of knowledge of somebody else or a
Yeah.
situation. And I had an interview. No, I didn't have an interview. So was having a conversation with a guy in America. And the reason before this came up was because I was a part of this group, and this guy, he did this video and his energy was amazing. I really felt a connection to him, and I felt like I needed to know him. And I reached out to him and I sent him this message from my heart saying, "Hey, what you have is really rare. Your thoughts, everything is totally right." Because he was saying things that were against the grain. So it was a business and entrepreneurial space, which was talking
Yeah.
about money and how much we can make in a month. And he came out with this video like, I'm not focusing on these things. I want to learn. I want to bless people. It was just a beautiful point. And then you were getting people that goes, "That's great, but remember, money isn't a bad thing." And he wasn't saying that. He was just saying, "That's not my focus." And I just sent him this message from my heart. And he was like overwhelmed with this kind message. He's like, "You don't get that often." which I was thinking, well, that's true, actually. Not that doesn't happen often. Someone randomly messaging you and just saying something really kind to you. And I realized that God was reaching out to him. So I said, oh, do you fancy like networking? Do you fancy jumping on a call and hearing each other's stories? He's like, yeah, definitely. So before this call, I've got this feeling again. And this feeling is that God wants to move in his life. Now, I didn't know if he was a Christian. I didn't know if he believed. I didn't know anything, to be fair, about him, only that he seemed like a really nice guy, young guy, similar age to me, a little bit older. So I said to God, and this is the first time I've ever done it because I really wanted to get a word of knowledge. And I said to
Yeah.
God, I was just like, right, God, give me something that is gonna give him an encounter with you. And I'm thinking, I'm getting ready for a constant, I'm getting ready for like a big long sentence, like, he was
Yeah.
born on this day or whatever, like a conversation. You know what I mean? Like, I want God to speak to me, like, right, Luke, this is what you're gonna say. When the video comes up, you're gonna say this and you're gonna say that. And none of that happened. All that happened that came to me was a thought, and it was a thought with authority. What I mean by that, it was out of the blue and it came straight to the forefront of my mind. And it was just
Yeah.
broken left leg. That was it. Broken left leg. So then I went back to God and I was like, did I just imagine that? No, when you start questioning yourself, like, did I,
Oh
why
yeah.
am I, why am I
Yeah.
thinking, why am I thinking of a broken leg? And then I'm going, right, God, what about the broken leg? Silence. I'm like, no, no, no. I need more than just a broken leg. Like, I need how this came about. Like, do you know, I need the big picture. And I'm thinking, right. So then what's really interesting, I know you were telling someone about this actually, is then I was like,
Yeah.
okay, bro, God's saying broken leg. So then I go in my mind, I think that makes sense because I know this guy's quite sporty. I bet he broke his leg playing football or something. Like, and I was trying to like
Yeah.
tie the story together. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we start having this conversation. And then I feel the pressing on my heart just to blur it out. And I just went, Brett. And he went, yeah. And he goes, have you ever broke your leg? And he went, like, and I was like, playing football. And he was like, no. And I was like, he was like, I broke my toe. And I was like, oh. And he went, can I ask why you asked that? Now, thank the Lord he asked that question.
Yeah.
So he said, why did you ask that? And I went, right, I'm going to be totally honest with you. Like, I'm a Christian. I believe in Jesus Christ. And I believe that he knows you. And I asked him to reveal something about your life that only he would know, I wouldn't
Yeah.
know, and no one else would know. And all I got was a broken left leg. This guy's face goes white as a sheet. He starts welling up in his eyes and goes,
Yeah.
ha, ha, there's no way this is possible. And
Right.
I was like, go on then. Because I realized he didn't break his leg, right? So I was like,
Yeah.
go on then. And he went, okay, I'm gonna send you a picture. So he gets his phone out. And I'm gonna show the picture to the viewers, but I'll describe it to the listeners. And he goes, 3 days ago, one of my best mates and his girlfriend got shot at in the street. His girlfriend got killed, and he got shot in the leg, and he broke his left femur. And he sent me the picture. So for the viewers that are watching, he sent me the picture of the broken leg. And
It's
then,
an X-ray of the broken femur.
yeah, it's the X-ray of the broken femur. And he was like, he said to me, he goes, I don't believe in psychics. He goes, because I believe they can manipulate. I believe there's psychology to it. He goes, but there's no hope in hell that you would be able to dig that out of my life or know it because nobody knows that apart from me and him. And I just went, well, that's what God said to me. And then he just started going, oh, this is weird. And so I started asking, like, have you ever had encounters with God before? And he goes, well, my girlfriend's grandma's a Christian. but she says that, if I don't believe in Jesus, I'm going to hell. So I'm not really so much into the religion thing. He said, but I've never had an encounter like that before. I said, well, that was Jesus.
Yeah.
I said, maybe he's saving you from hell. And we had that like a bit of banter, like, and and then 2 days later, he sends me a picture of a Bible saying, I think
Yeah.
it's time that I open this again. And
Wow.
it was just one of the moments once again that I just had a little voice that sounded like me, a thought with authority. It made no sense
Yeah.
at all to me. I tried to come up with why it would make sense, and it was
Yeah.
just nothing that I could know. And it was so powerful. And that's the first time that I've ever experienced the word of knowledge and how
Yeah.
powerful it is. And it required the most faith, I would say.
So, so people who are watching this on YouTube or listening to this on a podcast, I want to talk about what God sounds like and how he can sound like so many different things. So we have, as Luke just described in that beautiful story, we have a word of knowledge. And a word of knowledge is understanding something that you should not have understood. So you're getting a word about somebody that you would not have any access to that information about. And generally, when you get that information, it is what I like to describe as to have people come to the attention, that God is listening to them, right? So it's kind of like, so if you're going down a street and you see something, right, and all of a sudden, you got to turn all of a sudden from the direction you were going. That's what it's like, right? You're going down in life and all of a sudden you're snapped to a different attention. So that's what a word of knowledge. It's just to make you pay attention in a different way, because he was going one way, and it doesn't mean that he stopped doing what he was doing. He just added different things to his life.
Mm.
Another way that God speaks to people is what I call in prophecy. Now, prophecy is when God speaks through someone to someone else. Okay, and it is the foretelling and forthtelling of information of what's happening. So it's basically what it is it's like when you, it's not like, it's when you have the ability to foretell something that is going to happen to someone 2 years into their life. Why would that happen, and why would you have that information? I I believe it's so that you can be prepared to receive what's going to be happening in your life 2 to 3 years later. Okay, and it's really important to understand it's not so that you can go, oh, this is happening to me now, this is so great. So if I said something along the lines to somebody that you are going to be a nurse and you're going to be helping the elderly people, and so that they can feel like they have a voice again, and you're like, well, I'm not a nurse. Okay, have you ever thought about being a nurse? Have you a desire to one? And somebody says to me, no, but 6 months later, they have a grandma who, is in a care home, and they go, I want to make a difference. And then they go to school, become a nurse, right? Then they go back to that work going, oh, okay, this has prepared me along the way. And that's what prophecy does. And then we have the most intimate knowing moments of God. And that is when he speaks to us directly. And he speaks to us so in a way that we know that he is with us, that we are comforted by him. He builds our identity when he speaks to us, and he gives us the ability to move in different moments in our lives to the positions where we could be more effective in our lives with our gifts and talents that we have. And so I want to talk more on what it's like when God speaks to you, what it's like when you feel like no one is listening to you and you're in the moments. And right now, the reason that we wanted to talk about, what God sounds like, and I know for me, this is a big one, is right now, there is millions upon millions of people stuck in their homes. And either you're in a home with a family, you're in a home with your roommate, you're in a home by yourself. Everyone is kind of in a home, and everyone is either in a position where they are still working or not working. But the biggest consensus is there is a loneliness sweeping nations right now. We don't have the ability to interact, and it gets really lonely. It gets really lonely. And so we put things on like podcasts to listen to, TV, Netflix, Crave, Disney Plus. We go on Facebooks and Instagrams, we do things like that, and we try to drown out the sound of nothing that is running through right now in there. And sometimes we become so distracted by the outside noise that we forget that in the very quiet core of it all, God's trying to speak to you. And so, what that sounds like is, as Luke said, it's this knowing. You feel drawn to something, you feel drawn to a picture, you feel drawn to a person. If you keep hearing or feeling or seeing the voice of, not the voice, a picture of a friend, reach out to them. Maybe they need your attention. Maybe you're walking in nature and you see the most, for me, when I walk in nature, I always see the most radical sunsets ever. And to me, it's like I see it and I just know that God loves me beyond anything when I see those moments. And my birthday was a couple weeks ago, and we've had really, really cloudy weather here in Manitoba. No snow, but cloudy weather. So I don't get it. And usually what we have is, even if it's snowing, we have lots of sun. We're in the prairies, we have lots of sun. And it felt like a week of clouds. And the day of my birthday, I get up and I have coffee, and my husband and I, we have a hot tub, and we usually have coffee in our hot tub first thing in the morning. And I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden I look out and I see the sun is coming up, and the sky starts illuminating in the brightest pink I have ever seen. And I look at my husband and I said, I think God's giving me a birthday present. And my husband looks at me and he goes, why do you think that? I said, because pink is my favorite color. I said, and I understand, like, right, science, I get that. I get that. But at the same time, of all the days, of all the times, of all the moments in that season, in my timing, on my birthday, in that moment, the sun came up in a bright pink. And so I chose to listen, and I choose to watch, and I chose to go, yeah, that's my birthday present. That's what I got. So it can be in things that you never expected. I find that sometimes I get things when I'll be reading a Facebook post and I'll be like, oh, so a word would jump out at me and I'll be like, Have you ever had that, Luke? When you're reading something, it can be something like a Instagram post, and all of a sudden this word, you see the same word over and over again, and you're like, are you trying to tell me something?
Yeah, it's like what you said. God uses the whole universe, right? He created the whole thing. So he's going to use all of creation to speak to us, whether it's the birds in the sky or the sky or things that have been created in the world. For me, there's a few things that you said that I was going to touch upon, but one of them is, for me, like, God really uses music. I had my first encounter with God through music. Um, when I grew up not a Christian, didn't believe in God. It's not that I didn't believe in God. I was one of them people that was like, yeah, I could see maybe there would be a God, but I don't really know what that is. And to be honest, I'm not really that bothered. Um, it has nothing to do with me. That was my
Yeah.
say. If he's the God of the universe,
Yeah.
it definitely has nothing to do with me. And so I'll leave him to it. And I remember that I was in a really, really dark place, and
Yeah.
really, really struggling with life. And I was just crying my eyes out at the time. in a really bad place. And then I cried out to the heavens. I was driven to my knees, I say. And as I cry out to the heavens, I'm like, right, if there's a God, if you're real, whatever you are, help me. And same thing happened again. It was a thought with authority, and it was a name. And it was a name that I'd heard before. The name was Haley Melander. And it began my journey of God trying to guide me through many things. And from there, I had to go and find out who this person was. I was able to contact them. She told me a powerful story about how she had gone through what I'd went through, and Jesus helped her. Then the same day, I went downstairs from work because I had a phone call with her from work, and my manager pulled me into his office and said, "Hey, depression's a spiritual thing. Do you know Jesus?" And I was like, "Oh, that's weird." So then he used my boss, and then I went on the shop floor, and some guy who walks in, who I swear to God was an angel, um, started speaking to me. And then at the end of the conversation, he was the most lovely guy, great aura about him, gave me a card and it had a scripture on it. And I was like, all right, I get the point. Like, it was like God was using so many different people. I couldn't escape it. And then
Yeah,
Haley actually sent me a song, and it was called Worth by Anthony Brown, like a gospel singer.
yeah,
And the words were, "You thought I was worth saving, so you came and saved my life."
yeah,
And B sings it so powerfully. And I'm in the car. And remember, I wasn't a Christian. I wasn't really into God. She just sent me the song and went, listen to it. And he just said, "You
yeah,
thought I was worth saving, and you came and saved my life." I never. And then I literally just felt like this overwhelming presence. And I just went, ah, and I just burst out crying. And I was just thinking, "And I was the same." I was just an absolute emotional mess. And I remember I pulled up to my best mate's house, and he, like, still to this day is like an atheist. And I remember I was really in a bad place. And I was like, I found it, Jesus. And he was just like, really? And I'm like, I'm telling you. At the time,
really, I like that.
like, everyone thought it was just a blip. Even my mum was like, he's going to grow out of this. This is just a phase. And it just never stopped. I was like, no, this, I can't escape it. And music has always been my thing. Even the other day, after spending a little bit of time praying with God, I was in the car and this song called "The Blessing" came up. And it's
Oh, I
funny
love
that
that
yeah,
song.
you say about the words, right? So,
Yeah,
and I've heard the song so many times, and
yeah,
the bit that stood out for me was, it goes, and he was talking about God's going to bless you, and he goes, and for generations and generations, and your children and his
yeah,
children, and it gives me goosebumps now because obviously I'm a dad, and
yeah,
it was a God was just like, I'm not going to just bless you, I'm going to bless
yeah,
Noah, I'm going to bless
yeah,
his kids. And I was
yeah,
so overwhelmed and
yeah,
crying my eyes out because God was making me realize that he was doing something so powerful in my life that was going to bless not only me but my whole family tree. And I
yeah,
was so overwhelmed. And it was a song that I've heard before. She wasn't singing that song when she recorded it for me, but God was going
yeah,
to use that song and the
yeah,
words of that song to express himself in the moment that I was in. And the other thing I was going to quickly mention about, drowning out God, I'm a control freak, right? I try and work. You're learning as I as we
yeah,
start to work together. Is I try and work everything out, right? And
yeah,
I remember this was about 3 months ago, and I'm there like psychoanalyzing. I get it from my dad, like constantly thinking and working things out, and I'm there washing the pans up, and I'm trying to work something out about God or whatever I want to do. Can't remember exactly what it was, and I'm like that, and I just put the pots down, and I just start to cry, and I literally fall. I sit down on the kitchen floor. No one's in the house, and I'm against the fridge, and I'm crying my eyes out, and I just go, God, I don't know. I don't know the answer. I don't know what to do. I'm fed up of trying to work it out. Like, over to you, basically. And I'm just crying my
Yeah.
eyes out, totally surrender. And I just felt like God was laughing.
Yeah.
Like,
Don't you just like, does that drive you crazy sometimes
yeah,
when I'm
he
like,
laughs at me all the time. And I
yeah,
felt like he was laughing at me, like as in like, now you get it. Now
yeah,
then I felt like he said, so now are you going to allow me to speak? And
yeah,
what he said to me, which was
wow,
for our viewers and our listeners,
yeah,
is it was just like my own thought. This wasn't like a
yeah,
supreme. It was literally like me talking to myself, and it was like, now are you going to let me speak? And I was just quiet, and I was waiting for the next thing. And then he said, "Listen to your wife. Your wife. Your wife. I brought you and your wife together. Oh, well, she wasn't my wife at the time. I brought
right,
you and Vic together. She, I work in her for you
yeah,
and this family."
yeah,
And I was so, because I look back and I'm thinking I was so trying to work it out myself, and I surrendered, and God saying, "Now are you going to allow me to speak?" And he says, "Listen to your wife. You need to spend."
yeah,
And what he did, he started to speak to me. My own thoughts again is in terms of stop going to bed late and go to bed with her. Stop going on
yeah,
your phone and start to have conversations with her. And
yeah,
that you need to listen to what she has to say about your life, the situation, and everything, because I speak
yeah.
through her all the time, but you're ignoring me because you're trying to speak to me through you. Does that make sense?
That's, Luke, that is so powerful. What you said right there, right? Where God said to you, are you going to let me speak now? Right. And sometimes we can get so caught up with going, do you not see what's happening to me? Look at what's happening. And we fall into these horrible patterns of, crying out all the time, like he's not, like he doesn't know.
Mm,
Right. And so we've had a lot of things, my family, we've had a lot of things that has happened. We've had we have had, my husband's had cancer. We've lost jobs. We've had a house fire. We've gone through, as a family, we've gone through quite a few things in our lives, and at the first time we started going through some of the hard things, and people understand, when you go through a hard thing, you think that if you just keep saying it over and over again, that he's just going to do something because, you keep saying it. So, it's like, I don't have a job yet. Okay, now I really don't have a job. Okay, now I can't even pay my bills. Like, come on, what is going on? And there's a moment, where he says something like that to you, Luke, where he says, like, okay, I was waiting for you to be done. Because the biggest thing that I've learned is that God is such a gentleman,
mm,
right? He's not going to overtalk you. He's not going to, right? There's a moment, where you're going to have to stop talking to catch your breath. And if you're not listening, you're going to miss it because you're just going to continue. And so when he tries to come in, and so some of the things as a mom that I teach my kids is that when we go through moments in our lives, moments that we just want to cry out or we want to be frustrated, we sit there and I tell them, don't talk, just listen. Don't talk, just listen. Just be quiet. Because everything of the world is saying, just go ahead and share everything that's happening, share all your heart that's happening. But here's the thing, the world doesn't know those things, so they're invested. Friends want you to talk about it, therapists want you to talk about it, right? They're invested, they are invested in you. But God already knows. He already knows the pain, or he already knows the joy, or he already knows those intricate details of your life. And he already knows the path that you can go on if you wanted to. And he wants to tell you that plan, right? And so those moments where you stop and he goes, okay, now I'm going to talk. It's my turn. And all of a sudden it isn't a condemning word. because that's also another fear. We're afraid that if we hear God talk, he's going to tell us everything bad that we've done. So we don't want him to. And that's not true. That's really not true. He won't tell you there. He's not going to say, oh, yeah, what did you do now? He didn't say, Luke, listen, I love you, but you got to get your act together, right? Like, that's not God. God is love. And if it's not love, then it's not of God, right? It's a full, complete circle of it. And so when you stop for a moment, wherever you are, if you're walking, if you're driving, don't stop. Unless you come to a stop sign or a red light, don't stop. But take a moment today. And it's like one of those moments you see them on TV, you know, when they slow down, it's a slow motion, and they tell you to breathe, and you breathe in. Imagine it slowing down to a slow-mo in your life for a second, and just breathe in, and that's slow motion. And just listen for things that you've never heard before. And just watch how he'll speak to you in those moments. And for Luke, it was words in a song. For me, it's actually not even, it's not words. I get feelings, impressions of things. There's people who have dreams, who have visions, who see. And there's people who just know things, just things out of the blue. They just know. And, you know, and that's just their way of interacting with God. You see, and what I love about that is because we're not all built the same. We're not all built the same. We're all built so differently. So what is something that, you know, it resonates with me will not be the same for you. But all in all, when it comes down to it, when he speaks, it's in love. It's to be a blessing, whether that's to you or to other people. And it's to just hear him and know that he is with you and knows every part of your life.
And I say this all the time to people is that you go, well, I don't believe in God. Okay. God believes in you. Well, I don't hear from God. No, you just don't know his voice. There's this sense of a lot of people go, someone said to me, I don't believe in God. I go, okay. What God don't you believe in? Because I don't believe that no one believes in God. I believe that people don't believe in the God that they fear the most, or don't believe in the God that they think God is. Oh, well, I don't believe in a
Yeah.
God that would send you to hell. Okay. Well, I don't believe in a God this. I don't believe in a God like that. So you're not saying that there's no God. You just don't agree with the God that might be being painted in the world. And I think it's really interesting to understand that even though you don't believe in God, God has always been speaking to you from the day that you were born. The first thing that he did was call you by name, and we had that conversation last week. He said your name and you came into existence. Like, God's been speaking to you and forming you and trying to guide you all your life. Maybe you've just been choosing to ignore him, or you're so scared of what he's saying. You don't know it's God, but you've got that little voice inside of you that knows that that big dream of yours to go and get this job or start your own business, and you feel a right pull to go and do it, but you're terrified because of the risk, but you feel this great pull. And there's a part of you that kind of feels like, well, should I go for it? But what happens if it fails? I think everyone has that. The difference is between, if you were to believe that that is God, you know that God does not fail. And I think that's where faith comes in, which I think would be a great topic for next week, if I'm honest, because the Bible talks about that faith comes from hearing.
Yeah.
And we spoke about it, about what you and your family want to do about coming over here. There are so many fearful things that are attached to that, but you sense and feel that that's what you're meant to do. And already we've seen God provide in many different ways already. but he does it at the right time for the right reason. And I think for me, I don't know about the viewers and the listeners, is that there's a great peace that comes in surrendering. And it isn't a surrendering in terms of like, I'm going to go with the flow. It isn't like that. It's a great peace in the surrendering of when you feel like you hear from God and you do what He told you to do, just trust that He's going to work everything out at the right time. And the majority of the time's about to come up when you're pretty much done. When you're pretty
Yeah.
much ready to quit, he then will be the moment. And I've always felt like that, because I think we are often about to quit the very moment that God's about to move. And I think everyone over this podcast, the last 45 minutes or so that we've done today, I hope everyone's kind of realized and gone, oh my gosh, I think God's been speaking to me all my life. And I just didn't know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And that's the, you know, the first time I ever realized that God spoke to us, I think I was 20 years old. And I had no, I was 22, and I had a child already. And he was young. Tristan was one. And I was talking to a friend in the lobby of the church we were attending, and there were so many people in the lobby. It's actually really loud because everybody's so loud talking. And I asked her one time, I said, how do I know? What's it sound like when God talks to me? She looked at me and she thought, and she says this to me: would you know when Tristan calls you from across the room? I said, yeah, I would know instantly. Like, over the loudness of all the people, if it was not him calling you, but if it was him and there was other kids even calling mom at the same time, would you know which one was yours? And I said, I would be able to hear him, anything. He goes, she said, that's what it sounds like when God talks to you. And I sat there and I had to process this. And it wasn't because, he was a still small voice in the crowd of loud, and that was significant. But it was the fact that I could identify my child in a room where there was 100 people talking all at once. I could identify him in a crowd of people. And that's what it's like when God talks to you. In a world full of people, he can identify you out of everyone in the entire world. And when you call to him and he calls to you, there is a knowing of who you are. And it's a personal thing. It's a very intimate thing. And the thing that I want to add on that is that not only do you hear it once, you start learning to hear it over and over. And in any situation, I tell you, sometimes when my kids got a little bit older, they could be yelling across the soccer field of 300 kids, and I'll know exactly that it's my child calling me for water out of the van in the parking lot. How do I know? Because I taught myself how to recognize their voice when they spoke to me.
I always say to people, it's like when you're a child and you're in your bedroom and you're
Yeah.
staying up late, right? And you know you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. You're still on your phone, or you're reading, and you're just not going to bed. You've got the TV back on, and then you hear footsteps. There's something interesting about that, is that I would know who was coming up the stairs. I'd know if it was my dad, or I'd know if it was my mum. And it wasn't because
Yeah.
my dad was going, "It is your dad coming. This is your father walking up these stairs." It, you know, it was the sound of his footsteps.
Yeah.
And I would know that first sound. I'm like, that's my dad. I would just know, because from
Yeah.
being a child, what I'd done is I'd been listening to these footsteps and then realized that when I hear this, my dad shows up. And you're
Yeah.
100% right, is it's a process of learning that from the moment you were born, God's always been speaking to you. And as
Yeah.
soon as you identify his sound, you
Yeah.
hear him all the time. And he's going to
Yeah,
hear you,
exactly.
and he's going to guide you as much as possible, but he's going to allow you to choose to listen to him and to choose
Yeah.
to partner with him on your journey. But this podcast, this episode has been so amazing. I've enjoyed it so much, hearing so many more of your stories that I haven't heard yet. I feel like there's a part two that needs to be done. I know that you must have so
I
many
do
more
too.
stories. Um, and I hope that this episode, I say every week, I hope this episode blesses you. And I think both of us would say that. I hope this episode has made you realize that God knows you and that He's been speaking to you the day since
Mhm.
the day that you were born. Anything less to add?
Yeah. I know. Just go and be blessed by all the things surrounded you. Just be blessed by them.
Hmm. Right, guys. So if you enjoyed this episode, if it did bless you, then please let us know by writing a post, tagging us at Damascus Experience, share it with your friends, your family members. Make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to on our podcast sites, take a screenshot and tag us. Do anything just to let us know that you've listened to this podcast, because we want to start to get to know you as much as God knows you.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Yvonne, for having me on the show.
You're welcome, Luke. Thank you for having me.
There we go. And we will see you all next week on the road to Damascus.
Damascus.
See you later.
Bye.